tutorial we will be discussing the process of science. The scientific method is a standard series of steps used in gaining new knowledge through research. The scientific method can be divided into 4 steps: observation, hypothesis, experiments and data collection, and conclusion. During the observation phase, new observations are made and previous data are studied. Scientists use their senses to gather information about a phenomenon or natural event, and then they develop a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative explanation for what was observed. This is developed through inductive reasoning and very testable. As an input from various sources is used to formulate a testable statement. Then the hypothesis is tested by experiment or further observations. An experiment is a series of procedures designed to test a hypothesis. It utilizes deductive reasonings to make prediction or expected outcome. The manner in which the scientist conducts an experiment is called the experimental design. A good experimental design ensures that the scientist is examining the contribution of a specific factor called an experimental variable or an independent variable to the observation. The experimental variable is the factor being tested. A test group is exposed to the experimental variable, while a control group goes through all the aspects of the experiment but is not exposed to the experimental variable. The data are the results of the experiment. These should be observable and objective. Here's an example of one. These are all test pots of plants, and yet we still have one that's controlled. So here they were testing the amount of nitrogen they've added to the plants to determine if there's any kind of correlation between the amount of nitrogen and no nitrogen at all. Where here they've used pigeon pea or winter wheat rotation. You can see that the scientists use the experimental data to determine different outcome. Here's another example. This one is looking at different reactions amongst the birds. They've picked one experimental data, one thing to look at. For instance, laying the eggs and the reaction, the bird's reaction to it. The results are then analyzed and the hypothesis is supported or rejected within the conclusion. So during the conclusion, the data are analyzed and interpreted to determine whether the hypothesis is supported or not. If prediction happens, then the hypothesis is supported. If it does not occur, the hypothesis is rejected. Findings are reported in scientific journals, peers review the findings, and then other scientists then attempt to duplicate or dismiss the published findings. Finally, we have the scientific theory. Many experiments and observations support a theory. A scientific theory are concepts that join together two or more well-supported or related hypotheses, supported by broad range observations, experiments, and data. And then finally we have the scientific principle or the scientific law. These are widely accepted set of theories. No serious challenges or to validity. So here's just a couple different examples of theories. For instance, the cell theory. All organisms are composed of cells, and new cells come from pre-existing cells. Homeostasis, we've talked about already. The internal environment of an organism stays relatively constant within a range that is protective of life. Ecosystems. Organisms are members of populations which interact with each other in the physical environment within a particular locale. So we have theories that have been developed through observations, hypotheses, and experiments.